The future USS John F. Kennedy is now 67% complete in terms of its construction. She's coming in 18% under budget.
With this new technology, why it's so critical, why we implemented it, is because now we're like 150% better.
It's just what Newport News Shipbuilding and the Navy needed after years of challenges involving the prior aircraft carrier built here, the USS Gerald R. Ford.
A warship that's taller than a 20-story building, longer than 3 football fields, and powerful enough to sail for decades without refueling. This is no ordinary vessel. But here's the real shocker. The USS John F. Kennedy almost wasn't ready for action. A single piece of tech nearly derailed the entire $13.2 billion project. What was it? And how did the Navy turn a liability into the system that could define the future of carrier warfare? Stay with us, because this answer reveals why rivals watch this ship with unease. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Imagine spending over $13 billion on a single warship only to discover that its most critical system failed at a rate 6 times higher than expected. That was the reality for the Navy when the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, known as EMALS, came under scrutiny.
Aircraft carrier tomorrow.
The future USS John F. Kennedy is arriving significantly cheaper and more quickly than its predecessor.
Scheduled to start being decommissioned next year. Once that starts, the Navy will only have 10 carriers instead of 11 until the JFK is complete.
Replacing the old steam-powered catapults was supposed to revolutionize carrier aviation, making launches smoother, faster, and better for both lighter drones and heavier strike aircraft. Instead, it delivered reliability numbers that fell dramatically short. On paper, EMALS should have been able to conduct 4,000 launches without a mechanical fault. In testing, it only managed about 600 before something went wrong. For a vessel that lived or died by its ability to launch aircraft, those numbers look less like progress and more like a trap.
The Kennedy cost just $11.4 billion versus the $12.9 billion it cost to build the Ford.
Retired Vice Admiral Herm Shalansky says this doesn't mean the Navy can simply go back to older technology like what's on the USS Nimitz.
The difference may not sound catastrophic until you think about what it actually meant during sea trials. Every time a pilot prepared to hit the throttle, the entire deck crew had to imagine what would happen if a fault tripped mid-launch. A catapult malfunction at that moment didn't just mean a failed test. It meant potentially slamming a $70 million fighter against the waves at 200 miles per hour, with the pilot's life on the line.
Oh, we're tremendously proud of it. You know, we learned a lot of lessons on the Ford and have implemented them here on the JFK. So it's definitely a great feeling.
The Norfolk-based USS Gerald R. Ford, the most recent carrier to be built, had similar challenges during construction.
Engineers admitted that scenario wasn't a rare outlier. It loomed over every cycle because the mean time between failures was so low. At sea, even a single catastrophic error would erase years of progress and turn an expensive carrier into a useless target. And the difficulties didn't end with launches. The arresting system that was supposed to recover returning jets used advanced electromagnetic braking to replace hydraulic gear, which sounded futuristic on the drawing board. But the first iterations produced such inconsistent results that they risked tearing apart the very aircraft they were supposed to catch.
Kennedy, later this month, the 100,000-ton vessel will move from Dry Dock 12 to one of the shipyard's carrier piers for further construction.
It's when they land in the system that brings ordnance up to the flight deck. That's according to a Department of Defense budget document.
It was a cruel irony. A launch system that might throw away jets on the way out and a recovery system that could smash them on the way back in. For commanders, it wasn't just about broken hardware. It meant the entire concept of a next-generation carrier hung by a thread. Now the Navy faced a decision it couldn't avoid. Should it press forward and deploy a multi-billion-dollar ship with unproven systems, hoping problems would be ironed out later? Or delay the whole program and risk falling behind global naval competitors?
Then, once the Navy gets it, the Kennedy will allow air wings to deliver more bombs on target more quickly.
Which is a number of aircraft that we can launch and recover on the flight deck. And considering that's the primary purpose of an aircraft carrier.
The gamble involved time, money, and credibility. The United States had staked its maritime dominance on the idea that Ford-class carriers represented the future. Yet here was evidence that the crown jewel of the design wasn't ready for war. No easy fix existed, and engineers quietly admitted the project lagged far behind requirements. The solution was patience, though it didn't come cheap. Instead of rushing deployment, the Navy committed to years of relentless refining, a cycle of troubleshooting and updates that tested every piece of code and circuit. Crews ran thousands of launches under real-world conditions, wringing out weaknesses through painful trial and error.
Exactly, that's a great improvement with the Ford-class carrier, upwards of a 30% increase in the sortie generation rate.
The USS John F. Kennedy, the Navy's next carrier to join the fleet, needs more time for work on the system that stops planes.
Over time, adjustments to software smoothed out failures, hardware was toughened, and flight deck teams learned how to manage the system's quirks until the flaws disappeared. On the Ford, over 22,000 successful launch and recovery cycles provided the proof that emails could finally deliver what the Navy demanded. Those lessons fed directly into the Kennedy systems, meaning it wouldn't need to stumble through the same rocky road. What began as a humiliating liability ultimately became the cornerstone of the Kennedy's design.
The future USS John F. Kennedy is now 67% complete in terms of its construction. She's coming in 18% under budget.
With this new technology, why it's so critical and why we implemented it is because now we're like 150% better.
It's just what Newport News Shipbuilding and the Navy needed after years of challenges involving the prior aircraft carrier built here, the USS Gerald R. Ford.
Instead of a system that broke trust, the Navy ended up with technology strong enough to handle decades of flight operations. The Kennedy didn't inherit the failures. It inherited the fixes, the reliability benchmarks, and the confidence built from bloodless but costly trial runs. And that transformation is where the real story shifts, because those breakthroughs didn't just rescue one ship. They changed the role of the Kennedy from a troubled carrier into a flagship of how wars at sea might be fought in the future. What looked like a staggering mistake has become the very system that gives the Kennedy its future edge. EMALS now launches aircraft with the consistency once thought impossible, anchoring the ship's ability to operate for decades under constant demand. The lesson here isn't just about hardware, it's about risk and reward. The Navy gambled on unproven ideas and paid the price in time and frustration, but the payoff is dominance at sea others can't match. So consider this. Pushing the limits of technology comes with setbacks, but patience turns experiments into tools of tomorrow's warfare.